Hey guys, I think we're just on. I'm just going to give this a second here just to make sure we're all up and running. Hope everybody's doing well. First and foremost, I just want to thank everybody for joining us this evening. I know everybody's got busy schedules, back to school, all that crazy stuff. Tony and I were just talking about kids and getting back to school. It's always a lot of fun, especially when you've got older teenage kids. But at the end of the day, that's just part of growing up, I guess, right? So for those of you that are brand new to Savvy Investor, don't necessarily know who I am Mike Ponte. I'm the founder of Savvy Investor and also an investment company called Prosperity Real Estate Investments, longtime investor. And Savvy Investor is really designed to kind of share and talk a little bit about real estate investing, and more importantly, trying to be more of a support mechanism, a support tool to help people be motivated, encouraged, and more importantly, try to learn from other people's experiences. And at the end of the day, we're all here focused to making sure that we're all going to be successful on our journey together. So with our previous series that we've concluded, I'm just pretty excited. I've got lots of awesome, cool guest speakers lined up for the next 4 to 6 weeks. So stay tuned for a lot of this stuff, and lots of really good topics that we're going to be talking about, especially one that we're going to be highlighting today. And we're focusing on screening and finding quality tenants. And that's a real key one because there's lots of crazy things going on. And you got, changing of CERB, you've got unemployment rate at an all-time high, you've got companies that are going under and are struggling. And so with all that turmoil and turbulence that's actually happening, how do we find quality tenants when there is a market of lots of other landlords all trying to attract those types of quality tenants? So we're going to talk a lot about this, and it's one of the reasons why I brought in the big guns, and his name is the Rhino. I want to know a little bit about that, Tony, as well. His name's Tony Sera from Avail Properties to help provide some guidance to this important topic. And for us, for those of you that are also new to Savvy Investor, I like to have these sessions very engaging, so I can see your questions, share your comments. I try to provide as much interaction as I possibly can. And if you've got questions for Tony in the middle of the presentation, please share, and I'll make sure that I try to do my best to answer them during the session or even after, where we can just go online and respond. And I know Tony is a Savvy Investor as well, and I'm sure he'd be happy to respond to any questions that are being referenced after the session as well. So I'm honored, and I want to thank Tony for joining us. Tony, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. So
thank you, Michael. I'm glad that you asked me to come on. Really appreciate it.
Great. So, I've got, one of the things I ask for a lot of our guest speakers is, provide a profile picture and a little bit of a bio. And I was quite intrigued with your bio, to be honest with you. I'm just going to read it out to everybody. So I don't know if anybody knows who Tony is and where he's from, and I'll reference that in a second, but I'll just read it. So Tony Sera holds the heart of his wife, Melanie, and is the father of 2 young girls. They own 6 single-family income properties and manage more than 50 homes with their company under Avail Properties, Inc. Tony enjoys practicing martial arts called Hapkido. Did I say that right? Yeah. Good. Okay. And his friends there gave him the name Rhino. So again, we'll dig into that in a second. So Tony's created his own paycheck as an entrepreneur for more than 20 years. He has experience with bad credit and great credit. He has gone hungry despite working overtime and paid himself more than $250,000 a year. And Tony has stared into the abyss of financial ruin and worked his way out of hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. And he's overcome workaholism and burnout to find true wealth beyond money and living a happier, more fulfilling life by design. I read that, and actually I was quite intrigued to read something like that, because in this game called real estate investing, and I'm sure that is very relatable to a lot of different people. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Tony again. And then maybe just to begin with, just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do. I'm intrigued to the story of where your beginnings were, and obviously the Rhino thing has got to be explained a little bit as well. So maybe you can just share a little bit about that and tell people just a little bit about your background, so they can say, why do we have this Tony guy on here, and what is he all about? So go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. So we guide our clients through investing in real estate and then manage properties for them. And we've been doing that for 8 years. here in Edmonton. You answered a lot of my stuff. I didn't know you were going to read my profile there. Threw me a bit. But basically how it started is we got into investing because we had a contracting company that just grew bigger than we ever imagined it would. And that was at a time when the oil field sucked up a lot of labor. So we had a hard time hiring the skills that we needed. And so as it grew, I found myself going, well, things will be better when I hire an estimator. Things will be better when I hire a controller. Things will be better when I have another supervisor. And we just kept getting bigger and bigger, and the problems just kept getting bigger. And so I was just working insane hours. Drywall was a lot of what we did. So I would carry, 8 tons of drywall a week, delivering it and doing repairs and supervising 35 subcontract crews and more than 70 projects at a time. And so it was a lot. And so 2008 came around, and we all of a sudden found ourselves without a whole bunch of multifamily contracts we thought we had. And that we really quickly got into debt. And then by 2010, we had worked our way out of it and got rid of all the employees and gone more with a subcontractor model. And then the greatest business partner ever, my wife, became pregnant with our first baby. And that really created a problem for me, because I couldn't see how I was going to be a dad, work the hours that I was doing, and pick up the work that she was doing as well. And so that's what got me hunting for another way. There has to be a way that I can bring home the bacon and not put in so much time. And so that brought me to Don Campbell's Authentic Canadian Real Estate Investment course, a 3-day seminar. And I had tried stock market, mutual funds, and everything else there, and not done very well with it at all. So I was super skeptical. And I sat next to a RAIN member that had been there for 25 years and had 100 houses. And he was just the nicest fellow. And I was like, it's possible. This thing is real. These real estate riches isn't just a slogan or a sales program where people make more money selling education than they do actually doing it, right?
Yeah.
So that was really encouraging. And I took that information and went home and negotiated lower interest rates on my mortgage in a 30-year AM. And that pays for the membership, no problem, right? And I house hacked, and then the more I learned, I built a little house on my acreage that we've been renting out for years, and then I found ways of finding money that I already had. I just didn't know how to access it, and so there was a bunch of crazy ways to do that, and we bought our first 2 condos off of one of my builder clients. And my accountant at the year end, was doing our books, and he's like, "Wow, this is just a license to print money." And at that point, I was drinking the Kool-Aid. Now this is awesome. This is the real deal. And but now I have this big company to run, and now I have rentals and new babies. I'm not sleeping much. I'm really not sure if I should have been driving during that time at all, but we made it. And so we switched. I was really burned out and trying to hold it together for a lot of years there. And the real estate was doing so well. We're like, why don't we just build these up-down duplexes, and I'll build the houses with my own 2 hands. And in doing that, I'll earn the money for the down payment on the next one. And I'll build, 5 or 6 of them, and I'll be done. I'll be financially free. And so that was the plan. But the appraisal came in lower than I expected it to. And the construction cost was higher than I expected it to. And then, and so all of a sudden our credit cards were maxed. and that encouraged us to start looking for joint venture partners and share our new money machines. You know, even though that house cost more than I expected it to and appraised lower, it still cash flows $1,100 a month, and I share that with my joint venture partner. I'm like, that's I mean, it's golden.
Yeah,
It's great.
exactly.
I built a brand new house with no money down is technically what I did. So
So good.
so it worked. Even though I thought it was the end of the world, it worked. So
Cool. So
so that
cool.
brings us to here. Yeah, 8 years later.
So tell me how you've changed, I guess now with the property management company, how long have you been doing the management side and what got you into that aspect of it?
Uh, we realized that we were really good at it. We had some great tenants, and all of our properties were new and attracted really good tenants. And we had all the systems. We were putting a bunch of the systems in place anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like, well, why don't we just start doing this for other people? Um, and so it's been fantastic because I let it grow slow. I didn't have a big marketing budget or anything like that, just word of mouth and doing a good job for people. And it's allowed me to stay at home and be a stay-at-home dad with my kids and watch this thing grow. And it's been great. So
Cool. Awesome. That's great. So what about, so now that you've kind of maybe made the evolution to the management side, I guess what are some of the key lessons maybe you've learned in the transition? And I guess I know for myself, I work with our property managers very, very closely. And I always say, hey, you guys should be writing books because there's some really interesting stuff that kind of comes along with it. Maybe you wouldn't mind sharing maybe one or two lessons that you've learned in a simplistic format. What are some of those key lessons that you've learned as being a manager?
a lot of people have nightmare tenant stories they can share. Almost everybody is like, oh, I've
Yeah.
had to get through it. My experience has been a little different. I've after 8 years and having 55 properties for more than 5 of it, we don't have any bad tenant stories. Sorry.
That's amazing. Amazing.
I must be a rookie or really lucky. I've heard it said that if you haven't had problems with tenants, you haven't been a landlord long enough, or you don't have enough property. But the secret is, Don Campbell said the sweet spot is above average homes attract above average
Yeah,
tenants and above average rent.
agreed with that.
And so we stuck to that, and we bought average price houses and renovated them above average, and people just want clean, safe houses, and that system has just worked out really, really well for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. And like, it was actually coming to a point that I was going to discuss really. It's just like, in this, everybody's market, there's many markets. We got people literally from all over the country right now, and everybody's market is very, very different. When you're looking at places in Vancouver, you can rent a closet for a significant amount of money and the place looks like a dump, and you can get away with that. But in more the balanced market, and when you're trying to get in a position when you are trying to find quality tenants, part of the screening process, for my opinion, is just the overall condition of your property itself. And it doesn't even require a lot of work, to be honest with you, and so for me, my experience is clean is the big one, some fresh coat of paint, maybe some flooring, stuff that really stands out really well can really make a huge, massive difference to create that appeal to good quality tenants. Are you seeing the same thing?
Exactly. I like to say that you need to show tenants that you're serious about having a house maintained, not just with your words. You can't say it a lot. You have to show them by doing stuff. So if you have a house that shows some things in a little bit of disrepair, paint on the plugs, broken plug, a little transition strip is loose or something like that, all of those things are pretty much permission for the tenant to abuse your house. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing to move them in and have a few deficiencies And then I come in there with the toolbox and straighten things up, and they go, "Oh, I wasn't too worried about that little thing, but they
Yeah.
are." And so they realize that that's how we're going to roll here. So
Yeah. Do
it's
you find that when you've got tenants that are of quality, I guess, they've looked at the property, they really, really like it, and with decent condition, do they tend to stay longer than maybe a property that maybe is not as quality? What would be your opinion on
yeah.
that?
Yeah, I actually, there's some tenants that move in and they're a bit demanding, and a lot of people would be like, "Oh my gosh, I've got a problem here." I like those tenants. I will outwork them every day of the week, and we get through that. And then they're the best tenants ever. They never bug me. They take care of things. The house looks like a show home. Those
Yeah.
particular people, those people are so particular that you're never going to have a problem with them. So it's not necessarily a bad thing having a little bit of a diva on the move in. Moving's
Yeah.
stressful. That may not be the actual them you're seeing. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. So I guess maybe while we're talking about like renovations and repairs and trying to get that quality tenant profile, it can be challenging. And you're from Alberta, and so you can appreciate that. You guys have gone through two recessions, be it 2008, 2009, which globally was an impact. But the biggest one was the most recent one, 2016, and the one that pre-COVID was pretty ugly. And so when you're dealing with a little bit of higher vacancy rates, probably like 2018, maybe even partially 2019, um, and you're dealing with a lot of vacancies, and you're seeing a lot of landlords out there. They're offering all kind of crazy incentives. The property's not in a great condition. And when you've got a tenant or a landlord that is kind of bleeding a little bit, and they may or may not have the money to do the work that needs to be done to get that quality tenant, what's your opinion on that? What do you think a landlord should do in a situation like that?
there's lots of things you can do. One of them, I just recently had a potential client buy a house and ask me to come manage it for them, and they wanted it to be to rent out the basement. And so I don't do illegal suites.
Yeah.
And especially if there's fire suppression or fire alarm issues or sound suppression problems, aren't there's no devices installed, and then not being able to heat their own space, not having a second furnace. And so my advice to him was, call my furnace guy. They'll finance the second furnace for you. I'll pull down the ceiling and sound insulate it and put it back up for $6,000. You can pay me over the course of 6-7 months, and we'll make this a legal suite and carry on. And they didn't want to go with that, so I had to part ways with them. So and so there's lots of ways that you can do it. One of the benefits of me being in construction is I can do a quick renovation for you, and we'll just add it to the monthly thing. I know you're not going anywhere. So
yeah. And I think that's the big thing. It's like, truthfully, is I find that, and I know I've seen a lot of landlords doing this, they're bleeding pretty much everywhere. Like, out of every orifice, this thing is not being rented. It shows poorly. And so every single month they're losing it. They're losing rent, and it just eats away. And sometimes, like you said, it's just need to find a way to make that actually happen. And you got to be open-minded to try to find a little bit of capital. And I think the key word for you is you referenced like clean, keep it clean. And small little things can make a huge, massive difference in getting the quality of tenant that you're looking for, right?
So, it doesn't have to look like the cover of Architect's Digest or something like that.
I agree. Yeah.
I used to manage Domino's pizza stores in Calgary. We'd buy them bankrupt and I would go flip them. And we had this old nasty store, and I just went in there and cleaned it. We put no money into renovation, but I cleaned it, and it made an amazing difference.
Yeah.
And so just being clean is, man, it's way bigger than you think it is. Like, and people may not notice. Actually, we become blind to our own mess. So when tenants move out, I remind them that they have a little bit of a bias on how clean it is, because they've gotten used to looking at it. And so when I go in there, you know, our definition is most likely going to be different. So especially, you know, my favorite is bachelor clean. I say, don't leave it bachelor clean because that'll cost you money.
Oh, that's really funny. So there was a reason why I brought you on, Tony, specifically based in Edmonton, is for a lot of the different markets. Again, you look at Vancouver, you look at Toronto, for example. They, you know, their vacancy is pretty much zero. So they've never had a situation in a lot of cases where there is way more properties than there are tenants per se, as maybe what you've had to deal with in Edmonton. And part of the reason why we wanted to have this discussion is there is a lot of uncertainty of kind of what's going to happen here. And so for people in markets like Vancouver and Toronto that aren't used to seeing a lot of adversity, I guess, in the market. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but if it does, it's important to kind of learn from some of the lessons of other provinces because they've struggled. And there's always a way to overcome that situation. There's ways to deal with this. And so this is one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to reach out to you, Tony, is, you know, when you're dealing with a situation where you've got more inventory than there are tenants and everybody's fighting for that quality tenant, what's some of your strategies in trying to attract a better quality tenant and maybe standing out versus maybe the rest of the landlords that are out there?
Quality wags the dog. You know, like in Edmonton, we've had some ups and downs, and landlords have had to step it up and do some renovations, or they were going to sit empty. I have a couple properties in Lethbridge, Alberta, which is strong and steady. Recession, they don't even know what that word means because they just keep chugging along with lots of diversity down there. So I have a brand new house there that I basically have a waiting list for because having a quality house there is amazing for tenants. The landlords have never had to fix things up. They get away with, you know, serving crap all the time, and it's fine. There's no demand for it to get cleaned up and renovated and stuff like that. So so it's big. And then the other thing is marketing. Three things: quality, marketing, and then sorry, I had a brain fart there. I'll think of it here. But anyway, marketing, you want a bunch of leads and you want to funnel them down to the very best and then have a pool of applications to choose from. Sorry, the third thing is we don't want people who shop on price, value shoppers, negotiators. We want people who have an emotional connection to the house. They're looking for a home, not a house. And so when you have a nice property, you're attracting that kind of person and not the price shoppers. The price shoppers, I think, is where all the heartache is. And yeah, I have a heart for low income housing or low income people, but I don't want to manage low income houses. And that's why. That's, you know, managing a crappy house with no maintenance budget is a recipe for disaster. So.
So who would be your ideal tenant, I guess, would you say? What would be, if you look for a quality tenant, I guess would be some of those check boxes that you would kind of click off and say, okay, that would be, that's hitting all the right spots in regards to possibly a good long-term tenant?
Yeah, so it depends on the demographics in the area. I spend a fair bit of time doing what I call rent rate research or a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis. And so if, you know, there's lots of things that I learned from there. If it's an older neighborhood and I'm trying to rent a bungalow that has very few stairs, I might say, hey, let's put in a shower here and get rid of the high tub. And we're looking for a more senior type person. Or, you know, if the price point is down, but it's a 3-bedroom house with lots of stairs and it has a, you know, a private yard or something, that suits itself really to a family or something like. So then, you know, and then there's condos where they don't have to shovel snow or mow lawns, the dual income, no kids, and millennials all fit really well into those. So buying a house with the kind of tenant profile that you want to deal with, I think is where to start. Or if you already have a house, decide who that ideal tenant profile is and speak to that.
Yeah.
On the marketing side, or like developing ad copy and stuff like that, I think it's imperative that your online experience be similar to the actual experience of walking through the house. So we put a lot of effort into, making sure that the pictures are in the same order people are going to see it, and we do the video the same way we're going to walk them through the house. Because if they saw the video, if good pictures online, all they want is for it to be what they saw online. They don't need it to be better or worse, and it gives them this. It's familiar, which kind of leads to, oh, this is homey.
Exactly.
So that's really important, and yeah.
Like I find, like, even with the advertising, and this is for a lot of people that are on here as well, it's kind of highlighted in the ad in regards to promoting this tonight. Our demographics have changed. Like, I'm 46 years old, and the old kind of just posting it on the weekly newspaper, community newspaper, that's kind of gone by the wayside. It's not that you can't still do that, because there's markets for that, but the demographics of our tenants have definitely changed drastically. Everything is online. You go onto Facebook and Instagram, and you get, be it other websites, for example. But honestly, and you can maybe comment on this in a second. I know for us as our company, Facebook's one of our number ones. That's our number one place to do a lot of our advertising. We get more leads from Facebook than any other place that we go with. And then secondly, the other part is exactly what you said: quality pictures. And in this day and age with COVID right now, video has been such a big player in regards to wanting to go and do a virtual tour. Like, at the end of the day, you only got a certain amount of time, Tony. You're not going to go and do virtual tours every 15 minutes to go do it. And you're going to record that video one time. And that's exactly what it looks like. And for the cost to do some really professional pictures and even a video, you'll be shocked. It's actually not as expensive as you think. And you can comment on it. Like, for me, I don't spend a lot of money on it. I spend maybe $250, and I guess maybe 30 pictures plus a video. And they do a phenomenal job with it, and it's all professionally looking like a real estate ad. And man, as soon as that's all done nicely, and 1,000, pictures say 1,000 words, but the video side, it just helps blow things up drastically. And to your point, is if the quality is there, if it looks exactly like the ads, then you should have a relatively decent response. And this is where us as investors need to differentiate ourselves versus a lot of these other landlords, is doing some of these things like pictures and video and stuff. Are you finding the same thing, Tony? Or
yeah, but good pictures and professional videos can be a problem too. That, like, a tenant can feel deceived if they see a nicely staged home and they get there, it's empty and it shows some wear and tear.
Sure.
They're like, this isn't what I came here for. And so I try to be very real, very, I do walkthrough videos. They're just short and to the point. And it's me going, trying not to be Captain Obvious and walking around the house, but it's just simple, to the point, and quick. Anything over 3 minutes, nobody's looking at.
I agree, 100%. Yeah. Now, it actually comes to a good point, because a lot of our videos is empty houses, empty units. So it's completely bare. But there are sites and there are programs that you can, and they can, and I see people do virtual furnishings or virtual staging. And I know there's probably people that are on here. So I'm actually intrigued to see what your response is, maybe for something like that, going versus an empty unit versus a virtual staging. What do you think? What's the overall perception from a tenant perspective doing one or the other? What do you think?
I think that, if a tenant goes through, a potential tenant drives through a neighborhood that, maybe is a little older, and maybe drives into a complex where your condo or your townhouse or whatever is, and looks a little rough on the outside, and then they go inside and it's the Taj Mahal, we've lost the value already. Before they got to the front door, they're going, I'm not sure this is for us. And so now it doesn't matter how nicely you have the inside. So staging something like that doesn't make sense. And I think most people have a hard time looking past other people's furniture. So I've had some great tenants with a really cool sense of style and keep it immaculate like a show home. And people aren't looking at the house. They're like, oh yeah, I would have gone with a leopard print there, you know? And I'm like, you missed, you know, that this has a gas oven and stainless steel appliances, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, that's interesting. So tell me about, you know, again, we talk about how the markets may be, you know, if there's some areas of challenge. One of the first things that I tend to find landlords doing is, you know, there's lots of inventory in the market, maybe not as many quality tenants, or not as many tenants, I should say. Lots of inventory, not as many tenants. The first thing I find a lot of landlords doing is to compete is this, they immediately drop the price. And, you know, I'm interested to hear your opinion on that. And the second part to this is the other thing we tend to see is a lot of incentives that are put into place. And I guess, what's your opinion on, you know, dropping the price, number one, incentives, if you do use incentives, and thirdly, do they work? And what type of incentives would you give a prospective, an ad, I guess?
So I do that rent rate research and set the price based on 5 criteria: comparable properties, averages, average incomes, price per square foot. I know that my price is good. And so I know that when I've aligned the 3 Ps, the people, the product, and the price, when I've aligned those things, I'm going to find a great tenant. And I just need to do the work until I find them. And so it can be frustrating, you know, at showing number 30, and you've got another application that doesn't quite fit your criteria, but showing number 31 could be the one. So I tend to stick to it. I'm going for long-term tenants. So I know that, you know, if you drop the price $100 or give a 3 months free, or something like that, you're going, you know, I prefer to do a free month rather than drop the price, because I don't want to stick them with a, you know, $150 price increase at the end of their lease, because then I'm at square one again. So that's my attitude. Oh, by the way, I never do a free month. I shouldn't say never, there's always exceptions. A free month's rent is always at the end of the term, as long as they follow their lease commitments.
Yeah, for sure.
I did just recently do one because it's getting late in the season, and we wanted to get it rented quick. It had been sitting on the for sale market for 4 months, and he just needed it rented.
Yeah, just get it rented after a while. Yeah, you know, I used a technique actually, and I'll share this with people too, because one of the little tricks we've used is, say, for example, we're now mid-month for the month of September. If I've got a vacancy that's there, I'll always say, you know, rent it now, and you get the month of September free, because realistically, I'm probably not going to get anybody until October anyway. So you might as well move in. Exactly. But honestly, that's a technique that I've used, and I still use it from time to time. But does it increase the amount of traffic that I get to my property? No, it's very, very. It's interesting.
Sorry, you kind of lost connection a little bit there. I apologize.
Sure.
My fear I mean, you want to make it easy for people to move, but offering the first month of free rent, I need them to come up with a large chunk of money to prove that they can afford it. So it's a screening thing. If you give them a free month's rent, they can get their last deposit back, and they're good. And I don't want it to be that easy, because I need that screening thing. It's the same with pets. We charge $250 non-refundable, and then we also charge $25 per pet per month. And we get a lot of bad press about it, and some people have a really emotional reaction to it. But I'm sure that has helped me avoid some bad tenants. So it's, you know, having them come
Yeah.
up with a big chunk of money is part of your screening process.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it comes to a poll actually that we just did on Savvy Investor: pets or no pets. What's your general rule of thumb when it comes to pets?
I didn't have time. We try to accept pets wherever possible. I believe, well, 70% of homes have a pet. And so if you're saying no pets, I think there's probably a 10% premium on your rent rate that you're losing. And you're only advertising to 30% of your potential market.
Right.
And I think that a tenant that is responsible enough to care for an animal, you know, doesn't leave on vacation for 3 weeks and have nobody checking the house. And they're happier there, they're gonna stay longer. So that's my take on pets. The only time we haven't personally had problems with pets. I did one. It was an unauthorized pet that we caught within a couple of months, but the hardwood was already damaged. But a tenant, a pet that we allowed to come in, never had a problem with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good. Yeah. For me, we're pet friendly too. We're specific on the types of pets we use, or we accept, and it was obviously dependent on the property as well. But I'm pretty pro pet. So.
Yes, some properties just don't suit certain pets. Like if I know that's a high energy dog, I'm like, you got to give this dog a yard. And I just, you know, this isn't going to work. So.
Yeah. Cool. So what about the screening process? Like we talked about trying to find good quality tenants. You know, I'm a big believer that you said is, you know, the quality of the property makes a big difference. And sometimes smallest little things can impact that, you know, making sure you're putting your marketing in the right place, get that marketing funnel as big as you possibly can to get the good quality people going. But how are you screening prospective quality tenants? What are some advice and tips you could maybe share for people that are maybe self-managing or have property managers? What is your opinion? What should they be looking for to find these quality tenants?
Sure. Doing the phone interviewing or text or email, whatever, however you go about it, is really important. I find if they aren't willing to answer a few questions, then they're probably going to stand you up anyway, and they weren't that interested. And so, you know, you want to ask them, you know, there's kind of 3 standard questions, like when do you need to move, who's moving with you, and what kind of pets do you have? And then, you know, if I'm getting a lot of showings and I'm trying to limit my showings even more, I might even, here's a little blurb that I commonly use. The successful applicant will have a household income of more than blah, blah, blah. Will provide the first month's rent and security deposit of this amount of dollars before receiving the keys and have a credit rating or cosigner above 650. Would you like to see this house this day or the day after? And that, you know, a lot of people go to radio silence after that, and probably a good thing. So you can weed out a lot of them with something like that.
Yeah, that's good. Listen, I got a question from Stephen. Stephen, thanks for your questions. And if anybody's got questions, start shooting them up. There's some great information that's being shared by Tony. So thank you, Tony. So Stephen, have you ever gone to see a pet at their current home before agreeing to allow the tenant to have a pet in your rental? So I guess going to their existing property, just taking a look before you go and see it. So.
Yeah. Now I'm pretty comfortable with dogs. My mom is a breeder. I grew up with a lot of dogs in the house. Dogs don't scare me at all. And so I'll even, you know, I know that you approach a dog slowly and confidently with your, you know, palm up, but I may break all those rules and kind of lunge at it to test. I've also I like signing leases at the tenant's current house, because then I get to see how they're keeping it and meet the dog. And when they have, you know, kids and stuff like that, they really like that too. And I get free coffee. Sure. So, yeah. But demanding that I meet the pet, no, I haven't, but I very commonly they volunteer it, and very commonly I just go to their house anyway and sign a lease. So.
Yeah, cool. One of the tips that we use, and it's not so much related to pets, Steve, but it's just the overall condition, is we tend to have a little peek inside their car actually. And this is something they actually own. And so truthfully, is if their car is looking like a disaster in the inside, be prepared in about 6 to 8 months. That's probably what your place is going to look like too. And that's just a rule that we tend to look at and use as, we'll go out and see it. Well, I should say our property managers do, but they go to have a quick look and have a quick determination to see what the overall condition of their inside of their car is. So.
With all my tools and materials in the truck, I wouldn't rent to myself then.
Fair enough. So that, when it comes to the screening side, what other things do you do? And Charmaine, I got your question, so I'll just leave that with me for a second. Tell me a little bit about how you screen them. So you've gone in regards to doing kind of the phone interview and some of the questions. What is your screening process in regards to approving, I guess, like credit checks and reference checks, what are those things that you do, and maybe some of the resources that you tend to use to help facilitate that?
Yes. So knowing your parameters before you start is big. We don't allow anybody whose income is their housing expense is more than 40% of their income, unless they have really amazing credit, or unless I know that's going to be changing, maybe with mom going back to work or something like that. And then we do weigh credit pretty heavily, but when you can see on their credit report that, it was a certain period of time, that was the problem, and not a consistent habit of always paying late. Those are different things like divorce or a job loss or something like that. We can see past that. And then I like to do a Google search to see if there's, if they've been in the news, or see what comes up with their name. I really scrutinize social media, so I'll go through and look at all their likes and stuff like that. And that's a tough one too, because just because they like, death metal and I don't, doesn't make them a bad tenant. So be careful there too. What else? We call their current employer. Never trust the phone number they give you for that. Always find the phone number yourself.
That's a good one.
And then doing a Google search for their previous landlord, or the previous landlord's phone number as well. Quite often when you put in the landlord's phone number, up come his ads for rent, and it's a legit thing, and you're not being had there. So, and that's just easy, only takes a second. Other than that, I'm pretty impressed with single key tenant screening over other ones that we've used in the past.
Sorry, it's single key, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Okay. And so she's also referencing criminal checks. Do you do a criminal record check at all with your prospective tenants?
Yeah, single key includes that for us, so we don't have to go down to the courthouse anymore. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question, Charmaine. And she's made a quick comment as well, is that if there's an applicant that's kind of come in, that she actually charges them for the check, be it simple key, whatever the cost is. And I think it's probably like roughly $50. I'm probably under $50. Tony, correct me if I'm wrong. And then if the credit check is good and they're approved, then she will refund that. I'm not sure if that's something you do or not. I know we don't, but.
No, I'm to ask her what market that is, because
for sure.
That's been really tough. I would like them to pay for their own credit report. I give them lots of opportunities to get a credit report and bring it with them to the showing so I can approve them. The only time I, send them a link and ask them to pay for it is when I know they're going to be a difficult file that we're going to get into co-signers and stuff like that. Or I already have an applicant for the house, but they haven't provided me with a deposit against first month's rent. And so if they really want to scoop this house, they can pay for it and move in.
Yeah, perfect. Good. So I got some people that are, I think, single or maybe self-managing. So single key, maybe you can tell people what single key is. Andrea has also asked a question. Are you a member of the credit bureau to pull credit checks? So How do you get authorization to do credit checks? Number one.
Mm.
And secondly is maybe just explain what single key is, and you're probably going to combine both together. So
Yeah. This single key is licensed with the credit bureau to do that, and so we just need on our application to get permission from the tenants to allow single key to do a credit check on our behalf. I heard that somebody was using Google Documents to get applications, and I thought that was fantastic, except I don't know how you get a signature on that. We use DocuSign for online applications, and we get an online signature, which works. So yeah, that's how we go about that.
Yeah.
Did I answer that question fully?
I think you did. You know, Rachel, Andrea, make your comments if that's answered your question. So thank you for that. So you know, I'm in agreement with you. DocuSign's been a real big one, especially during a situation with COVID, when people are not necessarily comfortable coming out. But we use DocuSign as well. It works very, very well. So yeah, good.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So what about, or do you do much in regards to other incentives, be it like fixed utility costs, free internet within your advertising? And do you find that attracts better quality tenants as well, or what are you finding?
No, I find that all those people are price shoppers, and I want people with an emotional connection. Also, utility costs have been a bit fluctuated quite a bit here, and so I try to protect my owners from that fluctuation as well. So we don't do the fixed fees. It's in the tenant's name 95% of the time. Otherwise, we invoice them. Invoice the tenant each month their portion of the utilities. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So, you know, we talked a little bit about the tenants, screening of tenants, finding tenants. And for those of us that are self-management, hopefully these are some good tips to help kind of support you guys in some of the things that, as things are kind of evolving and adjusting, and we need to evolve as landlords for sure, and constantly being on top of things. And as new information becomes available with, you know, unemployment, and so we just have to do a real good and better job in regards to standing out more to find quality tenants. But for those of us that are, you know, that's a big one for self-management. And the other part is if you're working with a property manager, you know, from my perspective, we got to work very closely with our management team. So it's a question to you, Tony, I guess for individuals that are hiring property managers, how do you find, and especially during this time, what's the best way to maybe effectively work with our property manager? You know, obviously there to support you, and at the same time, we're all in the same boat together with this main objective, you know, fill vacancies, get our rental income, and we're all in this together. We're all making money together. What's a good way to manage or work with our property manager to support and have a good, strong relationship with them?
Yeah, everybody has a different set of experiences and expertise. And I think sometimes in our rush or our fear about the current market condition, we don't value other people's opinions as much, or you know, two brains is better than one. And so I like to harness the expertise of my owners as well. And I appreciate it when they ask, and when they ask often. And so that's one of the big ones. You know, a lot of people come to me and say, my last manager had really poor communication skills. And then I asked them, you know, so how often and when do you want us to communicate with you? And they don't have an answer for that. And so really what it is they had a concern or question that they didn't share with anybody, and the property manager wasn't able to read their minds. Yes. And so that's a big one. Don't be afraid to ask. That's what we're here for. I consider myself a consultant, a guide. I'm not an expert. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to share all the experience and knowledge that I've gained over managing lots and lots of properties and networking with thousands of investors and dealing with a lot of tenants. And you might have an experience that I can learn from. So let's work together.
Totally.
The other thing is evenings and weekends. are busy for a property manager. And so if you add on owner communications, if that's an expectation over the Friday to Monday, that's really, I don't think it's fair to us or our families, because we're already doing a lot of showings and answering a lot of phone calls at those times. And so we'll commonly get someone who leaves a message at 4 o'clock on Friday, and by 9 o'clock on Monday morning, they're upset that we haven't returned their phone call.
Yep.
And quite often what's happened is they've asked us to do something that involves us communicating with 3 or 4 other people who need a reasonable time to get back to them. And those people need some time to answer as well. So it's kind of I struggle with this one, because in our modern world, back before cell phones, I would have had a receptionist that would have, been the gatekeeper for me. But with tenants demanding everything right now and owners demanding everything right now, we really have to protect our time. I giggle because I swear people know when I go to the bathroom and they're laughing and they dial.
That's so funny. You know, we got a pretty big portfolio. So for us, one of the tips and tools that we've worked that's been very, very effective is we have a weekly call with our management team. Okay. And so, once a week, set time, it's done. And when it comes to the first of the month, we're always trying to avoid the first, because that's a busy time, move-ins, move-outs, all this kind of stuff that's going on, eviction notices, all that stuff. But what happens is I try, for our company, we try to save all of those phone calls and requests and things for that particular day. So we have kind of a tight agenda, and we just try to bang this off within maybe 20 minutes if there's a lot of stuff to talk about. But there's some weeks that we're just like, everything's good. Great, perfect, nice seeing you, talk next week. And those are always the best ones, right? But there's lots of things that are always kind of going on. So we're always kind of checking it off. So we're trying to mitigate and manage time effectively with our team. And this way, by having that one-on-one discussion, just again, maybe only 10, 15 minutes, but then you can, if you've got a big portfolio, a reasonable portfolio, you can just start breaking these things down relatively quickly. And then this way, you're letting your property manager team do what they need to do, but at the same time, still getting that communication. And for us, when we summarize that discussion at the end, it's just like, okay, these are things that need to be done by the property manager. These are things that need to be authorized and done by the owner. We share that responsibility mutually, but it gives you a lot of that transparency. And for us, that's worked out very, very well. And I know our management teams loved it, because again, it's not me calling them, 4 times, 5 times a week, 15 minutes each. And then it's just like, it starts to compile, and, you got to use the bathroom sometimes, right, Tony? So
I'm not just a property manager, I'm an owner too. So I know how it feels to have a vacancy and be worried about that. So I tend to, touch base with people who have a vacancy on Fridays so that they're not stressing about it over the weekend and they can sleep well. The other thing that we do is have a Google Drive file that we share with them. So if I'm there doing a repair, they can see pictures of before and after of what was done. If I do an inspection, they can see those inspections. They have access to their documents at any time. All those things really help a person sleep better, and give the manager the freedom they need. It's interesting. A person will get a little scared or freaked out about a situation, and they really want to touch base with that manager so they feel better. And so they start, making demands. And so now I need this, and now I need that. And it inhibits your manager from being able to act in your best interest, because now you have them running errands, and instead of doing what they need to get your property rented.
I agree,
so
100%.
it's a little bit counterproductive, but
yeah,
it's an emotional thing when you're empty and you don't have a reserve fund.
Yeah,
So.
I agree. And I think that's the key. It's just like, work with your team members, work with your management team. They're crucial in the business, big time, and so having those relationships, working together with the same objectives. Everybody, we're all in this together to rent the properties. We all want rent, because that's how we all make money, mutually together, work together. So let me ask you, and this is kind of the last question. I know there's a few questions that are coming up. Maybe Tony, if you wouldn't mind maybe answering them, or I can answer them after the session if you don't mind, or it doesn't have to be
Oh,
today or
sure.
even tomorrow. But one of my last questions is, we got a lot of people that are new investors. They're just getting started. They're scared. You're an investor yourself. What would be your advice for people that are just getting started investing? And it doesn't necessarily have to be property management. Maybe it is, but what advice would you give to people that are just getting started in this world called real estate investing?
When you buy a house and you get it rented right away, your mortgage isn't due till the end of that first month. So tenant pays rent and you don't have a mortgage to pay. You can take that money and put it into a bank account for that property. And we suggest that a person does that, have a reserve fund or a stay power fund, whatever you call it.
Yes.
And that they keep the security deposit in there, and all their transactions for the house goes through that account, and that becomes their ledger for their accountant. And you can also prove that you didn't use that security deposit for anything personal, that you weren't using somebody else's money for your own benefit, because that account never went below that amount. And then, if you have a house that is going to be empty for a month, you're not like, oh my gosh, you need to get this rented now, give it to the first person with a heartbeat who comes along. Because when that happens, when you're on showing, number 30 and it seems like you're never going to get it rented, and the money is a problem or whatever, that it helps reason come in to play a lot more, and you're treating it like a business and taking out the emotions. And so when we sign contracts with new clients, one of the things is if you don't have a reserve fund, I'm sorry, but I can't share your panic. If everybody lived, I don't live like that on my own properties, and I can't do it for other people too. So
yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. And you see it sometimes where a lot of investors will, for them, do I keep a reserve fund in a separate account, like you've said, or do I use some of this reserve to buy my one last property? And now they've gone so skinny, and it becomes an issue, because guess what? This game that we call real estate investing, you own one property or 10 properties, you will, over the long term, have a vacancy. It's going to happen. And if you haven't planned for that, you might be feeling a little bit of pain. And so it's important to build those reserves, right? So
and things happen. So I usually recommend 3 months of operating expense. And by that, I mean, condo fees and the mortgage payment. We pay, insurance and property taxes annually. And so that way, each month we just use it as an escrow, and that amount occurs in the account. And it helps with our cash flow. And that way, if a property sits empty, the grease in the drains tends to harden a little bit, and all of a sudden you have a plumbing bill. And maybe the humidity water runoff on the furnace gets a little cold because somebody turned the thermostat down a little bit, and all of a sudden the furnace goes down or whatever. So usually when you have a vacancy is when you have the higher potential for something to break and incur more bills. And having it's going to feel like you're getting kicked when you're down if you don't have that reserve fund, and you skate through these things sleeping at night. So
yeah, cool. That's great. Can I steal you for one more question, because this is a good one from Charmaine? Is that okay, Tony?
Yeah, you bet.
Perfect. So, and thank you for this one, Charmaine, because it is a really good one. For out-of-town investors, they're referencing, and I guess this would probably be self-management. So I'll just read it. I've heard some property owners that do not live where they own a rental will put a digital lockbox and then provide access to a potential tenant so they can look through the property vacant themselves. So this, again, self-management, a lockbox, they can go and look at it themselves. Because it is a smart lockbox, the owner can see when the person entered and when the key was returned. Do you do something like that?
No, I've dreamed of automating that and just having tenants go have access on their own. Unfortunately, one of my jobs is to you know, we don't know who we're meeting all the time. And I've had people open a window, unlock it for potentially the purpose of coming back later and stealing the appliances. So that's what you're risking. If they decide to stay in there for longer than you hoped, or went out a different door, or a patio door or something like that, all of those things become possibilities. Windows got open, it was hot in there, and then it rains that night and blasts through onto your hardwood floor.
Yeah.
A lot of these things, there's just so many things that your liabilities you're opening yourself up to. The technology isn't even there yet as much as home automation is. And unfortunately, when houses are empty, they don't have internet connections quite commonly. So yeah, that would be great. I honestly don't recommend that people self-manage from a distance unless that house is really new and maybe a condo where they only have the interior to worry about, no heating systems or anything like that. I've replaced furnaces on Christmas Eve and stuff like that. So that's what you're signing up for. That's
yeah. I kind of agree with you. And so the technology I think is there, but the problem is, you know, part of the screening process is meeting the individuals, and it's not so much what they say as just their overall body language and everything else that comes along with it too. And so for me, I know I wouldn't be really comfortable with it, or even I wouldn't be comfortable with my property manager just saying, here's access. And to your point, there is a lot of risk that can be involved, and obviously you'd have to put some really strict process in there. But once you've given out that code, or that code to get access, it may not be the same person that you've been interviewing that's actually going in to see the property, like pre-screening the property. So I've heard the same thing too, Charmaine.
yeah.
And I guess it's based on comfort level, to be honest with you. For me, I know I wouldn't be comfortable with it, and that's just my opinion. So yeah.
I remember the first time I rented out a property, someone moving provinces and hadn't had that face-to-face meeting, you know, my spider sense was tingling and I was worried about it. And so I really like to meet people. Yeah, and then you know, sometimes I just rented out a house first showing, and that's rare. You know, I like to have a pool of people to choose from so I can choose the best of. And first showing, I was, you know, just that made me nervous, you know. So I don't think I'd ever go that way. I know that there's the author of Landlording on Autopilot had this thing where you come down to his office, give him a deposit and fill out a form, take a picture of your driver's license. He'll give you the keys, and if you don't return them by 5 o'clock that night, he charges you $100 or something like that. Yeah, I don't see that working, because $100 is a small price to pay for your appliances if someone leaves a window open.
I agree, 100%. Cool. Well, listen, if you guys have got questions, we're just wrapping things up here, and great information. Thank you. If you guys are enjoying what you're listening to, thumbs up, please. Share some comments. And if you still have more questions, please post them, because like I said, we can come back and answer those questions after, or even if you want, direct message either myself or Tony, if you're not feeling comfortable posting on this, because at the end of the day, this is all about sharing information for you guys to help you become better landlords. So with that being said, I just want to thank you, Tony, for joining us. It's some great information, really, really helpful. So, you know, yeah, you know, and like I said, it's an important topic. At the end of the day, these are the individuals that are paying your mortgage, paying your rent. You want the right people in the property to take care of it. And more importantly, just, you know, you want to make money in this game called real estate investing. And it really has to start from having a good quality tenant that's in place. So again, thank you very, very, very much for joining us. I really appreciate that. So
thanks, guys.
Good. So everybody, as I referenced kind of at the beginning, we will be having a sequence of lots of guest speakers going to be joining us over the next several weeks. And so we'll be kind of ranging between Wednesday and Thursday. I'm really excited about next week as well. We are going to be talking about the power of rent to own with Donna Cook, who is the queen of rent to own. So for those of you that are been interested in this investment strategy and want to learn more, she's going to be sharing a lot of her little bit of secrets, some pitfalls to avoid, and more importantly, how to make the strategy work in your investment portfolio. It should be a lot of fun. She's a great lady. So that's going to be next Wednesday at 6 p.m. So hoping that you will all be able to join us. And again, thank you, Tony, for everything. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for coming out tonight. And I wish you guys all a wonderful evening.